Everybody, we're so excited to welcome you to yet another Impact Investing Network think tank. And we specifically decided to call it a tank versus a mastermind because we're not on any pedestals. We're kind of at a round table because this is uncharted territory for many people, and we want the healthy exchange of ideas so that we can all just level up. And so each month we are trying to bring different elements, different people into our meetup group or into our think tanks to share different ideas to stretch and expand us. We have had people speak on, cement housing. We've had people speak on, housing solutions for homeless, which was absolutely amazing. And today we will be joined by Chad Shepler, and he will be discussing affordable green urban infill housing. And if you are in a city type area, Matt Kontoff and I were just in Columbus, Ohio, checking out an asset and with our team. All that to say, there were so many infill opportunities in that urban area, right? And so there are really healthy ways about going about supporting affordable housing and supporting the environment. So we're really excited to invite Chad. He's still on his way, and that leaves us time to go ahead and give some introductions. Remember, these might be your next partners. They might be that connection to you making that next step with creating an impact investment. So I am Julie Hawley. I am one of the founders. My co-founder is Camilla Jeffs, and she'll speak in just a moment, give her introduction. And Nina Hawk came on, has been like absolutely instrumental, and we appreciate you as well. So, and once, just so I don't get ahead of myself, impact investing, we're trying to bring purpose and profits together into alignment. Our investors don't have to compromise their profits in order for us to do meaningful, purposeful good in the world through our investing practices. All right, Camilla, I'm going to turn it over to you go for it.
Hey everyone, welcome. So excited that you're all here. Like Julie said, I'm Camilla Jeffs, longtime real estate investor. Been doing this since I was 22. And so that's 20 years, y'all. So if you can do math, you know how old I am. But it's been a great ride. It's been a really good ride. Started out in residential, now in large multifamily and assisted living. And Julie and I, about a year ago, we were like, we just started to get alignment because I've always talked about impact investing. I always wanted to create more impact, to do better, to do more with my money than just simply get a financial return. Been really interested, I call it in the investing trifecta, getting financial, social, and environmental return. And the beauty of that is the industry that we're all in, real estate, we can do that. We can achieve all three of those in one swoop, which is phenomenal. And so we just kind of start out with, well, what if, and I don't have any like mega credentials in impact investing or affordable housing. Like we were just literally just trying to figure out what can we do to do it, right? So since I don't have any like background knowledge, we thought, well, maybe we can find the people who do and bring those minds together and really create something that we can all just kind of, talk about and create something bigger than ourselves. And so that's what we're here for. So Julie and I do not have the answers, but we are here to help ask the right questions so that we can all collectively come to some good answers and figure things out. So it's been really fun to be on this journey and to learn all the different things that we've been learning along the way. So I hope you guys will join us every month. It's just really great knowledge and it's exciting to be part of change in the world.
Speaking of every month, I'm going to give you a spoiler. We are going to have somebody speaking on how they create grants for people for wireless internet and those type of technology packages. It's absolutely phenomenal how they can help in the affordable housing space and the grant writing part is free. So it's just amazing, but that is coming up. And we have another yet unconfirmed, phenomenal speaker that is on the heels of that. So every month, somebody amazing is coming. Nina, why don't you go ahead and give an introduction?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Nina Hack, and I'm with the Recalibrate Capital Partners, and we are a multifamily investment firm focused on bringing smart building technology to our project and our investors. A very nice meeting everyone. My husband, Jeff Hack, is on as well. He was the one who introduced me to Chad. So we look forward to meeting everyone, getting to know everyone, and this should be exciting. Thanks so much, Julie.
Awesome. Thank you. Janelle, would you like to give a brief intro?
Hi, everyone. I am Janelle York. I am located in Minneapolis. This is my first time on one of these calls. I'm glad to be here. I and my son, he may be joining me soon here. He's a 17-year-old interested in doing the business with mom, he says. So we're going to do this together. And it's very important to both of us to invest in a way that is not harmful to the environment and makes an impact. So sustainable, environmentally friendly, socially important investing is what is our goal as well in the multifamily and self-storage space. So I'm glad to be here and to meet all of you, and I look forward to connecting and hopefully partnering on some deals going forward so we can all make a difference.
Thank you, Janelle. By the way, one of the people I'm trying to rope into speaking for us is all about green renewable energy. So she's very much on board. I just have to get it scheduled and slated, and her knowledge is just phenomenal. So Tate, so glad to see you.
It is so good to be here. It's good to see you too, and everyone else. Yeah. I'm Tate Seamer with Greenlight Equity Group, and we are investors in apartment syndications in primarily Columbus, Ohio, Central Ohio markets, some of the tertiary markets there, and also in Oklahoma City. And we're also always looking in the kind of the Tulsa market. We don't own there yet, but and we've had the joy of getting to work with Camilla actually on a project, and that was amazing. And so yeah, we're I would say that we are fierce advocates for our residents. That's really our priority at our company, and investors, of course. And those are the two groups of people that we serve and think about all the time, and think about how we can make those lives better and richer and fuller and safer and all that stuff. So we've had some challenges. We've picked up some class C minus properties in the last year, and stabilizing those has been definitely challenging, and we're still in the middle of that. And but I love the forward thinking aspect of this group. And we started out that we have a leaf in our logo, and that actually is a reference to our desire to do renewable energy and green projects. And so whenever possible, and whenever it pencils all right, we do upgrades, a lot of eco-friendly upgrades, even in Class C properties. We've done
Awesome.
TPO membrane roofs with insulation and all that stuff. So yeah, excited to be here.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. We're going to jump down, and hopefully we have time at the end to get everybody in for full introductions. But Chad is here, and we're really excited about all of the information that he has to share. We don't want to run out of time for that. I also want to honor introductions, but I want to encourage everyone right now to make sure that you have your contact information down in the chat box so that everyone can connect up with you. And, if you haven't yet connected with somebody in this group, make sure that you connect up with them on their preferred platform via email or the social platforms so that you can extend your network. Because obviously, just by nature of being here, you already have a shared mindset around this topic. We met Chad via the Hawks. And so I wanted to go ahead and hand this over for a moment to Jeff to like Jeff, how did you meet Chad? And tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, sure. So my founder, Charles Hatzel, had some connectivity to Storybuilt, some of the senior management there. We've had a number of conversations about smart building technology, the way we see the industry and how we want to partner with developers. Storybuilt as an organization, very forward thinking about how to incorporate smart tenant amenities, really not just create the properties, but a particular lifestyle at the properties, and also their span of development touching many different types. So build to rent, mid-rise, garden style, micro, clearly a great footprint in Texas, growing into other parts of the Pacific Northwest. And we've been really working together to figure out ways that we can, really partner to grow our companies and our footprint around real estate development and smart building technology. So, really looking forward to working with them in the year ahead. And Chad has been an amazing advocate for us and the technology that we bring to the market. So I'm excited that he's able to join and he could talk about Storybuilt and how they kind of view the future of development with tech and sustainability. So really excited to turn it over to him.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me, Jeff?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it. Appreciate you guys having me. I think you guys shared the story of Storybuilt already potentially, but I'll give you the 2-cent version, right? We are a vertically integrated developer builder based in Austin, Texas, but we build in Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, Denver, Seattle. What's important about that first part, the vertical integration, is for each of you guys, right, staking out your own claim, whether it's Class B, A, C buildings in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City. One of the things that the founders and the executive team here have learned over the last 2 decades is if you don't do it yourself and own the process, there are going to be too many stakeholders along the way that take you in a different direction. And the way we think about that is early on when we would partner with, let's say, a general construction company or a third-party architect, even if we started with great green intentions, right? Smart technology, green intentions, building in the urban core, someone of those 12 constituents would drag us away from our core purpose when we started that project, right? There was a very high likelihood that someone would lead you off course. It could be your equity investors, right? It could be your third-party design firm. It could be the general contractor who says they can't do that, or that's too hard in a building, or we've never done that before. So about a decade ago, we saw that as the number one constraint to us doing what we wanted to do. We had picked the urban core. We were building on what I'll call difficult urban sites, right? In Austin, Texas, and Dallas. We're not building in the suburbs. And what we started to do was systematically bring in-house every vertical that we could control the process, and really started with architecture and civil engineering, but it made it all the way through property management and HOA, so that we are the capital, we are the land buyers, we're the development team, we design it, engineer it, sell it, build it, and then manage it into perpetuity. If it's a full rent asset, we're managing it as property manager, and if it's a for sale asset, we're still deeply involved with it after the fact as the HOA managers, so that we have to live with that community day in and day out for its existence, which means the small choices you make early on in the process, whether it's green roofs and solar or smart technology, have a visceral impact to how the building performs at turnover and how the building performs over the life, right, as an investor. And so doing that has allowed us the freedom to really find our niche and hone in what we do in a way that I think maybe trips up other people. But central to that thesis, and I think a lot of people on this call are sort of green focused investors, which was, we made a conscious decision a decade ago as well to try to raise the money for our properties outside of the money that we had as a company from individual investors. And we did that because we went to capital partners early on a decade ago, and we were too small to have a voice, and we were given a lot of direction, even in early product pre-development. here's what you do, here's what we don't do, here's the buy box, no, we're not doing solar, no, we're not doing spray foam, no, we're not, going to put that green space on this property because, we want to yield more units or more rentable space. And in particular in Texas and Austin in particular, trees are a big impact to a project here, and certainly a costly impact if you see them that way. And so we've been able to navigate around that by having, for the first decade, individual investors that bought into the thesis of what we were doing and the design behind it, and were willing to take some of those risks with us. You can call them financial risks, but they're really just risks, and they all panned out really well. Now, that being said, we got bigger as a company over the last decade, and we're taking on a lot larger projects. Some are 500,000 square feet of mixed use on a property in an urban core. You're talking about a very big project. And so we had to go to the capital markets for funding these projects going forward. But what was interesting is that last decade of vertical integration of project proof, right, in the marketplace, not only were they delivered and sold, but they were operating well, allowed us to go into those conversations with large capital partners and have a voice for our product type and what we wanted to do on the investment side, whether it's smart technology, whether it's environmental, whether it's really just delivering back to the community trees and green space and things that we think make it a better built environment as opposed to just maximizing the yield on a property. So those two things, the vertical integration and choosing your investors wisely up front, have paid off big dividends for us in our process. But it doesn't always go smoothly, as everyone on this call probably knows. And so I do have a couple thoughts around things that we did wrong, that we would have done different and that we're looking at differently right now. One is the advancement of technology, and Jeff can allude to this on the property, e-property care side. It's amazing to see what's happening. In fact, a team of us just went to the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, and we're spending 3 days just seeing what's out there in the marketplace, from HVAC equipment to humidity management to smart building. There's just incredible product out there. The problem is, if you don't have an internal champion who can understand those and bring it from all the way from the land side, all the way through development, pre-development, bidding, budgeting, construction, and then execution, you will have missteps. And one of the ways that manifested itself for us, which was we wanted to do a really cool community in Austin with these really economically green friendly HVAC systems. We never used them before, and hired a consultant to help us. We knew very little about it and tried to come up to speed. And what we found out post execution on 50 plus houses was that we didn't spec the systems just right. And we also didn't educate customers well enough on how to operate them. And so it led to a year learning where we, certainly at our expense, had to retrofit these units. But it pushed us down this path of really understanding that if all the constituents who are involved in this, the trades who are going to sub out the work, right, the consultants who are going to advise you, don't really understand what it's like on the ground with that new technology, then you need to experiment more before you go full in. So where we look at innovation now is, if we're going to do something as crazy as that, we're going to completely go different on an HVAC system. We need, a better test environment than to go ahead and do it on 50 homes, out in the wild where it's really hard to manage the process. And so having and finding, we're still working on this. And if you guys have solutions, I think we're all ears, which is, how do you find that trade base, that engaged trade base that really understands whether it's solar and green, water retention, all the way to waterproofing, all the way to smart homes, right? Every one of those at the end of the day, someone shows up with material on a job site and has to execute. And for us, that's the last piece of it that we really can't control, that we're really trying to risk mitigate around, so that we don't do all the work, the planning, the budgeting, the setting aside the capital and designing, and then get to the finish line and have a mediocre solution that has to be retrofitted, which I'm sure most people on this call have run into one of those things over time. So certainly can answer questions or go in any direction you want, but for us, that vertical integration and choosing your investors, at least early on, wisely, allowed us a decade of free reign to really kind of figure out what we want it to be so that we could be a voice. It's still difficult. I mean, I'll tell you now, we have some capital partners that we're in, billion-dollar joint ventures with that have whole departments that are associated with environmental, social, and governance. And to this date, we still haven't gotten a firm commitment as to what that means. Does that change their investment thesis, on each project? Does that change their budget expectations on a particular line item? We just don't know. And so it's great that these larger capital partners have set aside potentially money and or departments to focus on that. But even at that scale, they're trying to figure it out.
Chad, this amazing insight and information, and I appreciate so much the transparency you're talking about. Hey, there are ways that this can, you can have hiccups in this process. But I'm curious, when you are thinking about investors and you are choosing your investor base wisely, what were some of the ways that you were able to select your capital partners? Oftentimes people will be like, somebody's going to throw money at me, I'm going to take it. I'm not one of those people. I like alignment, full alignment with people. So how did you navigate that?
It took us 2 years, so slowly. The way we went about it was we went probably just over 2.5 years ago. We went to New York City. We found an investment partner, a bank, to help us, and we started to meet with partners. At that point, we had a pretty good track record. We had $1 billion pipeline. We had a lot of product that was finished. But every meeting we had that first year was very odd to us, in a sense that people were like, we really like what you're doing. We like your design, but we want you to only do multifamily. Or we love what you're doing, but we really want you to focus on townhomes in Denver. And, no more commercial, no micro rentals. And so that first sets of meetings over a year were just disappointing from our perspective, because the vision that we've always had and what makes us different is that we buy entitled land in urban cores, right? Austin, Dallas, Denver, Seattle. We do not buy unentitled land. But when we buy that land, we underwrite it for its current entitlements, but we have a grander vision of what we think it can become. And that vision goes through sometimes years of development work with our internal design team. We have 40 architects. Like, these guys are from Harvard, and they're, some of the best in the business at urban infill. And so we, from a financial perspective, want to underwrite a project to its current entitlements, but we're envisioning what could be there, and we're really flexible. And it can start as townhomes. It can end up as micro units. So you can start as micro units and end up as 11-story condo, hotel mixed with retail. Like, we don't necessarily care as a company. We have a whole team who can manage a property of any flavor or sort. We can do it so that piece of it, that first year, was a very insightful year for us, in the sense that we knew we couldn't find our partner because no one was thinking about the market, or that group of people wasn't thinking about risk in the urban core the way that we were. And so the next year, of course, throw COVID in there, which is a fun distraction for the real estate industry. And we finally found a couple partners, one in particular, who bought into that thesis that, like, we love I think Jeff said earlier, the lifestyle that you guys are going after, this sort of urban live, work, play lifestyle with environmental conscious and the design and trade-offs that come with that, right? From a cost standpoint and from a look and feel. And they were less concerned with what it becomes, meaning, like, they're okay if it's a micro rental, and they're okay if it becomes spec office, right? And so that was really important to us, because if you don't do that, then you are already starting off on the wrong foot, designing things that may not be the best for that marketplace, for that submarket, for that street corner. And then you start to have a bunch of trade-offs, right? And in the best case scenarios, those trade-offs aren't terrible. And the worst case is you end up designing something that no one loves, and you made a bunch of concessions that, eventually make it either suboptimal for your customer base. So you've missed your lifestyle, you've missed your customer base, and or you've missed the green energy efficiency or smart version of the property and the design that you wanted. So that was our lessons learned. Be patient. We took us a long time. And honestly, there was a moment there, a year or so into it, we didn't think we were going to be able to find a partner who bought into that thesis, right? That we were going to have to bifurcate ourselves and kind of go after smaller partners in each vertical, which is something we really, really didn't want to do. So that's our story in finding them, I guess.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna dig a little deeper because I just feel that everyone's gonna ask, but where did you find the partner? How did you unearth this? Right? Sometimes in the multifamily space, people will say like, hey, how'd you get connected with family office money, capital and things like that. So like, how did you find this relationship? Or
Yep. So I'll explain it to you guys, but when I explain it, it will become very obvious. This is a very general rule in life and in business, right? We are a company that we knew at the very beginning, we were going to build in a very small space, meaning urban cores, which means you have to deliver every single time because you can't just move to like a city 30 minutes away and rebuild again. Like you're building in the same street, right? You're building in the same submarket that if you don't perform. And so we've always treated our investors, our customers, and our city partners that way, right? That we had to deliver on what we were going to say. Otherwise, we couldn't build in Austin or we couldn't build in Dallas. Along the way, obviously, with our customers and our investors, you sort of build a lasting relationship, right? Many of them have been with us for decades. One of those investors was a friend of the founders and mine from college. And he happened to be working for an insurance company and investment bank in Denver. And he happened to be at a dinner where a very large, it's the main joint venture we have is with a group called Partners Group out of Switzerland. And they were at a dinner having a conversation about how they couldn't find developers who had like this kind of thesis that was a very, closely aligned with theirs. And we got a phone call that night from our buddy, John Wilson, who said, hey, you guys should fly out here tomorrow to Denver, meet these guys. I think you guys are more aligned, on paper than you think. And we literally flew out there and met with them. And over 6 or 8 months, we're able to cobble together a joint venture that ended up taking on 18 of our current projects and are funding the next 10 that we're doing together. So about $1 billion worth of development over a happenstance dinner that happened in Denver, last year. So that's kind
of interesting because it goes with that. I've heard this adage that the next person that you need to take yourself to the next level is actually like a second degree connection, right? It's somebody that you're connected.
Yeah, I subscribe to that for sure.
Yeah, Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess what some of the things I wanted to react to based on what Chad said, and Tate alluded to it a little bit before. I think every company has a different view on what ESG means, and largely because ESG is kind of a body of thought, it's not yet a standard, right? So I think as you leave this call and you look at your own practices and your own companies, you have to kind of say, what do I want to lean into that represents ESG to you? So if Tate's like, and I'm picking on him because I know him, it's like, if I'm going to use solar energy on all my properties, that may be his interpretation of ESG. I know other firms like Turner Impact Capital, where impact investing to them means social consciousness, where they want to do things in the community and they want to educate families and they want to provide services to kids. If Storybuilt version of it is, it's tech enablement, it's co-workspaces, it's smart technology, that's their version of what they're looking to do. So I think the answer in all this is you have to leave the call and start developing the house view on ESG. And every one of you is going to come up with a slightly different version of that, and then align to partners that it could help you realize that vision. That's really what I think you have to do. And Storybuilt obviously did it at scale, but every single one of the firms on this call can do it in the direction that fits their investor base and their business model. It's absolutely attainable.
It's to add to that, we've had trouble with this all along, trying to define it for ourselves, define it for investors. And what's funny is if you actually go back and look at the 30 plus communities we've completed, almost all of them, except for maybe 1 or 2, would qualify for most of the green standards that we know that are out there. But after the second one, we stopped applying. We stopped applying for multiple reasons, as the rules changed all the time. And it became something that was like, for us, which kind of what Jeff was alluding to, which is, hey, we found our North Star. Like we found out what matters to us, right? That we're going to go after. And it's not as important to us that we get the accreditation in the moment or chase that, the green 5-star, 4-star, whatever you want it to be in the moment. And I do think that's what's holding it's what's holding smart homes back. It's what's holding some ESG investment back, is this lack of clarity around just stepping forward and making decisions.
Thank you. That's great. And that's an interesting concept. A lot of times, a lot of people want to be black and white, and it has to be this particular way. And to, really what you're alluding to, Jeff, is, like, hey, let's, interpret this from our own convictions, basically, an interpretation of this. And if everyone's doing that, then this whole concept is expanding. Matt, go for it.
Yeah, to follow on your point, black and white. I have a friend of mine who works for the EPA, and he said, I'll invest with you, Matt, if there's some level of green or environmental whatever in the project. So I guess my question is, Chad, do you have investors that say, well, if you put in solar, that's fine? Or will they say, you have to do solar, you have to do smart technology and all these other things? Is there a certain bar at which folks will just not invest?
We don't have that today. I think part of that's historically all of our projects were funded by individual investors, and we had a track record with those investors. And so it was a little easier to sort of carry on that conversation year over year, right? And basically have that be the status, right? Solar's certain features of each of our communities were standard, and they knew that. But we never, what's funny is we never really sought out environmentally friendly investors. We just were very clear about who we were, and they were okay with it. And instead of, using that. But the second part of that is, in today's world, we don't know the answer anymore, right? We certainly have our own capital, and so we can fund a project or 2, 3, 4, whatever we want to go after. But if we want to fund these larger projects, we now have to go into what I'll call is phase 2 of our life cycle, which is working with the largest capital partners in the world and helping them define what ESG means for us, right? What does it mean for our joint ventures, right? What are we willing to get behind? And that's a heavy lift on our side. We have to be the one that designs it, scopes it, at some point fights for the budget, to do that, and the risk potentially associated with it. So historically, I think we got lucky in that we were just very clear, and our investor base at the time didn't see it as a good or a bad thing. They just saw it as what we were into. This next phase, this next decade for us will definitely be a lot of work on our team, and something where we've had to kind of create a whole department called innovation that's focused on these things, that they can shepherd them through early design iteration all the way through budgeting, through construction, and through effectively maintenance and monitoring, that they're delivering on what we said. And that, as we look to do the next project, and that, that full circle of development that we have purview to, because we're the builder, we're the property manager, we're the developer, that we get on that learning curve really fast, right? Because, as I said, a lot of these are new technologies in some cases, and the person installing them, has potentially never seen this product before, right? At the end of the day, if it's a roofing product, like I was just at the trade show, the Consumer Electronics trade show, and there was a new roofing product, which is basically solar that you can nail in with a nail gun. So a roofer can install it. I'll buy that all day long. But we already talked to our 2 roofing guys, and they have no idea how to install it. They've asked for samples. They're scoping it out, but they're going to go down a learning curve, right? Where hopefully it's a benefit to them and their other customers, but they have to be willing to go down that curve as opposed to staying with the status quo. And so you gotta reach out and find those trade partners that'll do that work with you.
You think most trades just want to do some sort of cookie cutter, same way every time? Just
I don't want to paint them with that brush. I think that there's a lot of them that feel that their job is to also move the envelope forward. But again, I think they're under the same constraints all of us are, which is labor, experience, and how do you get down that curve and make sure that if you're hiring a field crew of 65 roofing guys, that all of those have the training on the product types you're installing, right? And the more complex that portfolio gets, the harder it is to guarantee that, right? And so there's a challenge that they must have faced, right? Which is, do I want to offer all these solutions and the customers can pick from it, or do I want to specialize, right? So that I can deliver on the quality. And so if nail in solar roofing was what everyone was asking for, I'm sure there's many smart trade firms that would just absolutely pivot, go for that and move forward. As it becomes a nuanced product at first and it's niche, right? That's harder to say. You really got to talk a trade into it. It's been our experience.
I have another question, but I want to jump in on that. And I was having dinner with a friend who is in the environmental space. And she said, we're in the, and I'm sure lots of you already know this, but she's like, we're in the fourth revolution, basically, and we had the industrial revolution, but she's like, this is like, we are literally in the midst of this completely different revolution that's taking place. And I mean, she just was able to articulate very well how things are shifting and how they will totally shift, over in, this will just be one of those revolutions, end up naming it, but we'll find out in history maybe. But I'm curious if you would go into a little bit, because we have a lot of investors that are in the multifamily space that are here right now. And I am certain that just as Matt and I noticed all the little opportunities for infill, that they are noticing that as well. You had mentioned entitled land, you guys buy land, and it's not entitled, you work it through this process. If you wouldn't mind walking us through, let's do some of the definitions, terminology, because some people, aren't going to understand necessarily, oh, it's entitled land. And then also, how do you choose the right place?
Yeah. So, for clarity, we only buy entitled land, which in every market, that means that when we underwrite it, that whatever we're underwriting is what the permitting allows today, right? So if we're saying it's going to be 108 units of multifamily, 2 stories over a podium, that it's already entitled for that, so that our base case, right, financially works. But what I don't think we've ever gone with our base case ever. So what we do is we want to find land that's not at market, right? I think everyone on this phone call would agree that even if you buy a great property, if you're buying it at market or the top of the market, there's just different risks associated with that. Everyone's focus is to buy land at a great value, right? And so one of the ways we've been able to do that is that we have developed a skill, a team of folks who can take on really difficult tasks, right? So a good example is the building I'm sitting in right now. It's now 10 acres, but it used to be 5 acres, and we bought 5 more next door. But it's a property that's right on the edge of the middle of downtown Austin. Right. It is on South First Street. It is in the heart of everything. This property sat on the market for like 6 years because big, large multifamily developers tied it up. And then they tried to get the city and the community that's directly adjacent, the single family neighborhood behind it, to get on board with the 700 or 600 unit multifamily development. Right. So for 2 goes, it was Graystar, and I think it was someone else. And for 5 years, they had it tied up in different ways. When we finally got connected with the owners, we drew up on a napkin, like, hey, here's what we think. We think we can do some dense condo product in the front. We think we can step it back with townhomes, and we can basically take the topography and roll it down to single family homes and basically have it blend into the community behind it, right? And we were able to get not only the property, the community and the neighborhood on board for that in a way that allowed us to build a product that was much needed in the marketplace. The city in particular needs density, it needs homes, but we were able to work the city, work with the neighborhood, and the design changed 100 times. I mean, from beginning to end. And so that's the difference for us, which is we're willing to do that. And because we know that whatever the outcome is, we're capable of doing it. And so, if you go into it with that sort of open aperture of, oh my gosh, this is what it could be, that your ability to work with the community, the neighborhoods, and the city is so much different. And there are trade-offs when that happens. And a lot of times, if you're approaching it the right way, there's a lot of economic benefit to those trade-offs, and in a way that has almost always proven more vital for us to do. And so I think about all the properties, the last 10 properties we bought fall into that category, which is something was weird with them. Like there's a spring going through it. One was an urban farm, and the other one is too small to have underground parking, but we own the building across the street. And so we're able to share parking. Like there's always something that we're willing to do and look and maybe a site that was overlooked in the last cycle, or that, you know, but the opposite's true too, which is if you decided on a path and you stick with it, things just start to happen and things just start to sort of, it's not like, it's a weird analogy in life, but you know, if you're clear with your intentions, things become clear for everyone else. And so the last 5 of the last 10 properties that we've purchased, land sellers came to us off market and said, hey, listen, if you're talking about the urban core of some of these cities, people who've owned these lands have probably been their families for generations, right? They don't want to see it turn into a dollar store. They don't want to see it turn into something that they wouldn't be proud to drive by. And so literally 5 of the last 10 pieces of property that we now own came off market, where someone came to us and said, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to build, but if you promise me that you'll do it in the same way you've gone after all these other urban redevelopment programs, like we'll come up with a market price and we'll do a deal. And in some cases, those guys and families actually took dollar for dollar money they were paid in the land and invested in the company or in the project. In fact, almost all of those. And so they become a huge ally in what becomes of that property. And so that's our secret sauce. That's our unique thing. Not everyone needs that approach, but that has allowed us to be able to, what we think, you know, get land at a good value and be able to be flexible all the way up until you say, pencils down, let's build.
That's super insightful. And it just goes to that power of like staying on point, basically, right? And okay, hey, we're invested here and we're proving ourselves. We're vetted. People know us, like us, trust us because they're seeing what we're doing in this space. That is so cool. I want to make sure that anyone else who has questions, you know, feel free. You can unmute yourself to ask any questions that you have.
Chad, can you talk a little bit about the projects, whether they're market rate, affordable, LIHTC? You know, if you hold for longer, you know, like LIHTC could be doing a project, you're there for 30 years. So for the benefit of the group, can you talk about like the ratio of like what you guys are going after?
Yeah, so you know, we develop, so we're building in the urban core of Seattle, Denver, Dallas, and Austin. And when you do that, there's all sorts of constraints around affordability, market rates. On the multifamily side, we're almost always working with the city on some component of affordability, right? One of the projects behind us, I think it's 20%, yeah, 15% of the units are at 80% of, you know, market rate. There's 4% that are below that, 60%. Every city and every community is approached a little differently. Unfortunately for our markets, there's not a lot of uniformity around that. Seattle approaches it very differently. A lot of times what we're working on is the conundrum that I think a lot of us probably feel in the multifamily space today, which is how do you deal with parking? How do you deal with parking counts? And how do you future-proof parking, right? If we're doing, you know, in the case of the building I'm sitting in, we did subterranean parking, right? That's a huge environmental footprint that you're putting in the ground. And how do you utilize that, right? How do you better utilize that? Is it, you know, urban farming, right? How do you future-proof that building so that it's the maximum green footprint that it can be to meet the requirements of the customer and of the city? And honestly, that's one we haven't figured out yet, because you know, we're still in Texas, very highly parked compared to, like, for instance, we have a multifamily building in Seattle, city called Columbia City, and it's 150 units in the first phase, and it's about 100 more in the second phase. That development requires no parking, zero. Whereas, you know, in some cases in our developments, even multifamily in urban Dallas will be, you know, 1-to-1. And so how do you do things like that so that it can become an asset for the community, even if it is a requirement from a city that may not be the right approach, especially when that product gets into actual production several years from now. You know, if you're parked next to a light rail station, I don't think you need 1-to-1 or, you know, three parking spaces for every single unit you build. So that's a big one we're challenged with. The affordability one is difficult in a sense that you could try to be on the cutting edge there, but I think we have to work within so many nuances of county, city, neighborhood that we're almost always having to partner with whatever the level is that they're going after in that day, as opposed to being more thoughtful about it. It changes all the time, unfortunately, for us and our projects.
How do you cut through? You just said it changes as of that day, right? And we know that working with municipalities can be like this. So, what are some of your strategies on pivoting with, local, governments and ordinances that they, are feeling like the flavor is that day, and some examples maybe of pivoting hard?
Yeah, so it is hard, but like anything in life, if there's a constraint and you become good at it, then it's an asset, right? And so that's kind of the way we look at it, which is there's not our mission isn't to make it easier to work with the city. It's really not something we can control, right? What we have made our mission as to be as nimble and as smart and as flexible as possible, so that we can continue to put forth, kind of push the envelope a little bit with the city, and be able to deal with any of the direction that it goes. And so, and this takes on many flavors. So a good example of this is we have a community over in South Austin that it is today, honestly, zoned as high density commercial. It's a 5-acre property in the middle of a neighborhood, and it's zoned for high density commercial. And we don't want to put high density commercial there. The neighborhood certainly doesn't want high density commercial there. But they came back to us with a lot of asks for dedicating 2 acres of the 5 acres to park, and all sorts of things that would economically not make this project feasible. And so we sat on it for a year and tried to just sort of look at the way we could approach it. And we came back with like 4 options to present to the community. And we did that like 6 months ago, and just presented 4 very different paths just to get ideation going, getting creative juices going. But in the meantime, the city, the mayor in particular, because the city of Austin has zoning code from 1984, has not been updated. So obviously a lot of the things on the books don't make sense. And so the mayor passed a ruling that any current urban land in Austin that's zoned commercial can turn residential without question. And so we were able to go back to the community, not in a contentious way, because we had already presented a bunch of ideas, but it gave us more negotiating power, which is like, hey, we're here to partner with you. We're going to be in this community for a long time together. We're not going to ignore all the requests that you have, but we're at a better negotiating position to come up with something that works for both the community and the economics of the project. And so, if we hadn't bought that property, if we hadn't spent time thinking about it, if we hadn't really opened our mind to what all the possibilities were and tried to educate the directly adjacent communities, when that hearing happened or when that ruling changed, then we could have done one of 2 things. We could have sold the property at a higher price to somebody else, right? Or we could have been that developer that came in and built something that wasn't really what the neighborhood wanted. And so, like I said, I think every quarter or every month, I expect something like that to happen, right? In these urban markets, people are trying to get affordability, density, and great development. And, no one's going to go about it perfectly. No city council knows the exact ratio of parking to permits to homelessness to affordability to unit counts. And so they're all going to be experimenting. And I think as long as we're willing to roll up our sleeves alongside them, I think we benefit.
Yeah. Well, we need to start wrapping up. This is absolutely amazing and super helpful. I just want to thank you, Chad, for your time in advance. So as you were looking at 2022, what are you and Storybuilt excited about?
We 2 things. One is I'll do a shameless plug, even though we have no relation to this podcast, but one of our employees runs a podcast called Sustainability Defined. And I say that because the next decade for us is a journey of education. We feel that we're in a position right now, even though we have a lot of projects, we've got about $2 billion in our pipeline, that even though we have that and we have capital partners to fund that, that we're responsible for driving the ESG vision of those projects now. And we don't know what that means, right? And so we've taken some people from our design team that have been very passionate about that for years, taken them away from design, so they have no more design requirements, and focused them on innovation. We've taken the team to a Consumer Electronics Show. We've embraced podcasts and consultants to educate us. And so what we're trying to do is take the whole company on a year-long journey of education, with the goal of being, like Jeff said, I think at the beginning, is that afterwards we can redefine what sustainability means to us for the next decade. Maybe not what it is in the marketplace, maybe not what everyone wants it to be, but what it is for us, so that every one of these projects and everyone that's on our development team, our land act team, our construction team understands where we're going, right? And how we see it in our own world. So I think that's what's got us excited, that we've, I won't call us in the driver's seat, but that we're willing to take that time, and we're in that position to make that kind of influence. And but it also comes with responsibility, right? We feel responsible for figuring out what's supposed to be, what technology is working, what really is making the impact that it says it's making, what's being measured and what's working. And that's a long journey. Like that's a tough one. And but it's exciting for people here.
That is
Go
ahead, Matt.
Okay, just real quick. I know you're in Austin, Dallas, and over in Seattle. Do you have other locations that you're looking to expand into, or?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. All right. And I know there's
Can't
some
tell you,
places
but we do.
Okay.
Columbus, Ohio.
Well, no, because I looked into the solar thing in Columbus, and they don't have a net metering rule on the books. And so we couldn't do a solar panel in the parking lot. So.
Yeah, but I think it's important, everyone on this call, think about life in terms of like, that'll probably change in 6 months. And so that's the hardest part, which is like, how do you design, budget, go after development, and be nimble enough that, like, if you're not the one pushing it, it might actually still change in the next 6 months, and you want to be able to take advantage of that. And so you've got to be able to course correct and adapt really quick, which takes a different skill set.
That is awesome. Nina, Jeff, thank you so much for the introduction to Chad. Chad, thank you so much for your time and your willingness to just expand everybody's mind and understanding. It was phenomenal. And I just want to thank everyone for showing up, to the think tank this month. And next month, we always are going to have somebody that has something that's going to expand your mind in a new way and take you a little bit deeper. And honestly, even if this isn't your specific area where you see yourself going in regards to impact investing, this is a fantastic way to, right? We're all, one connection away from what we need. So this, you might be passing this type of information along. It might make you more agile in other situations. And just learning is always great. Never stop learning. Nina, anything else before we close out? Camilla?
I think we're good. Thank you so much, Chad, for joining, and everyone for helping us to make this a success. We'll keep in touch with all of you. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, Julie and Camille.
Yeah, and we're always looking for more speakers too. So if any of you know someone, please send them our way, as we'd love to continue this education.
Definitely. And I did drop a link to Sustainability Defined podcast in the chat box. And the chat box is filled with lots of important contact information. So remember to hit those 3 dots to save that chat so that you can go back and make sure that you're connected with these other amazing people. I know so many of you personally, and I'm like, gosh, this is a room full of extraordinary people. So just make sure you save that and that you're connect with the people that you're not connected with, and reconnect. Make sure you're staying current with all these awesome people that you are already connected with. Until next month, we will see you later. Go change the world.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.